Those who have interest in true crime genre, I'm sure you are aware of a thing called region-locked cases, when certain incidents make waves on local headlines but often go completely unreported outside the borders of the nation. Numerous other YouTubers covered such cases. Well, they did a splendid job in my opinion, and there is little reason for me to repeat the same thing they already did, especially when they did it in a much better way. Thus, I would like to tell you about one such true crime case that you are most likely haven't heard of, primarily because it is one of such region-locked cases. It happened a while ago, in 2019, in a small, quiet European country called Lithuania. In the chilling shadows of Vilnius, Lithuania's capital city, a night of revelry suddenly turned into a nightmare. A group of so-called friends subjected a 17-year-old girl to a relentless barrage of violence, mockery, and unspeakable cruelty. Pavel Volodka, a 22-year-old man with a dark history of previous conviction, led this harrowing ordeal. Now you may ask, why? Well, let's find out. Picture this. A group of young people with way too much time on their hands and too little responsibility together were spending their evening the only way they knew how, trying to sink their boredom in a glass of alcohol. Amidst these so-called festivities, Volodka suddenly and randomly started boasting to his companions about his twisted dream of taking a life. Little did anyone knew that in the near future the man would be fulfilling his twisted dream. The victim was a 17-year-old girl, orphan, living in a foster home at the time. Through the means of the internet and social media, she managed to connect with her tormentors online, leading to this fatal encounter on January 21, 2019. On such a cold January night, this girl was spending an evening in Volodka's apartment, along with a few others who would soon turn out to be accomplices. Another young lady whose last name was Samoilenko, who was 20 years old, and another man whose last name is Blazavichus, who was 21 years old at the time. Exactly what did this 17-year-old girl said to enrage Volodka or his two friends that warranted their supposed revenge, which turned out to be a murder of this young lady? That is lost to history. The exact words or reason for the killing is unknown. What is known are the consequences and the outcome. During her late evening visit in Volodka's apartment, at some point, Volodka decided to act out his aforementioned dream of taking a life. And for inexplicable reasons, the other two people in the apartment besides the victim decided to help Volodka in achieving such a goal. Before long, the young girl became the target of such execution. Beaten, threatened, stripped naked, she was tormented physically and psychologically. Both the killer and the accomplices laughed from her pleas of mercy and promised her that she is living out her final hours. They forced the girl to ingest honey despite her allergies, and enduring the cruel cutting of her hair Their brutality knew no bounds. What's even more curious, that this particular crime in question took place in a multi-story apartment house. You would think that the neighbors would hear the shouts and the noise and would call the police, but alas, no dice. I suppose such behavior is only all too common nowadays. People rarely intervene in order to not get themselves in trouble, as cold and heartless as it may sound. Either way, the court investigation has unraveled a gruesome tale. Between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m., Volodka, intoxicated and driven by vengeance for unknown reasons, joined forces with his accomplices, a 20-year-old Samoilenko and another companion, 21-year-old Blazavichus, to kill a 17-year-old orphan girl who considered them her friends, or at least good acquaintances. They threatened the minor with death numerous times throughout the night, brandishing knives as instruments of terror. The girl's shirt was slashed, creating an atmosphere of impending doom. The girl was punched and kicked at least 24 times to her entire body and slashed at least 47 times. As if all the beating and slashing and intimidation that lasted throughout the night wasn't enough, as dawn approached, Volodka orchestrated the final act to his macabre play. Around 6 a.m., he led the minor to the nearby bridge over the Vilnale River, with the intent to kill while standing on the bridge on a cold January, still dark morning. He mercilessly stabbed the girl multiple times, inflicting yet more grievous wounds. His malevolent plan to toss her into the river took a sinister turn as he kicked the hanging victim when she desperately tried to cling onto the bridge rail. Leaving her to plunge into the icy waters below, all three criminals walked away, laughing into the night. After the murder, it took about 2 weeks for the police to discover the body, stranded on the banks of the river. Meanwhile, Volodka gloated about his deed to his other friends, about how he had finally realized his dream of whacking a person. The court's findings painted a chilling portrait of a calculated killer. Volodka, described as cynical, remorseless, and indifferent to human suffering, committed an act that left irreversible scars on the society and had snuffed out a young life. Of course, the police soon discovered the body, and a murder investigation ensued. Volodka and his accomplices were captured and stood trial. Now you would think that for such a horrific murder, basically a real-life reenactment of a horror slasher movie flick, the accomplices and especially the killer would face adequate punishment according to the law. Well, they did end up facing a punishment at least, as dictated by the law. As for if it was adequate, well, depends. The victim's sister tends to disagree on the matter. 22-year-old Volodka, primarily accused of the killing in question, got 20 years behind bars. Apparently this wasn't his first stint neither. The guy was previously convicted at least 3 times. The court ended up deciding that despite the fact that Volodka doesn't really comprehend the gravity of the situation of what he has done, nor does he feel sorry about the murder he committed, these circumstances are still not enough to give him a life sentence. Samoilenko, the 20-year-old accomplice, for her part, got 1 year and 4 months, postponing the punishment for 2 years. Which in a nutshell means she walked. And if she managed to stay out of trouble for the next 2 years aside from probation, she walks completely. And that would be the end of the matter. Oh, and by the way, during the court proceedings, she did not offer an apology or an explanation as to why. The other remaining accomplice, Blazavichus, the 21-year-old guy, got convicted only for threatening to kill the 17-year-old girl, and not the actual killing itself. He got almost 3 years of actual jail time behind bars. But to add the insult to injury, The prison sentence was co-joined together with his previous convictions, so in all likelihood, for partaking in this gruesome crime, he probably got less than 3 years of a hard time. As you might expect, the victim's sister, in all likelihood her only remaining relative, remember, they were orphans. She was shattered by the loss and voiced her indignation about the issue. To her, the sentences meted out by the court were inadequate, failing to reflect the heinous nature of the crime committed. She pointed out that Samoilenko's callous behavior, especially her refusal to apologize in court, speaks volumes about her character, cruel, heartless, and a menace to society. In a twisted sense of justice, Samoilenko managed to get away with flimsy reasons as to why she should not be subjected to a punishment to the fullest extent of the law. The court came to a conclusion that because she was tried for a serious crime for a first time, and she was deemed to have little direct involvement with the murder, her actions are classified into a light crimes category. Because she had a job and she was raising a young child at the time, even though her actions and participation in this crime were deemed cynical and she did not express remorse, the court deemed that the goals of her punishment and reintegration to society will be achieved without actual incarceration. In a nutshell, she pretty much got away with murder just because she was raising a child and she had a job at the time, and she did not strike the killing blow. The victim's sister expressed an outrage in her belief that Samoilenko indirectly contributed to the loss of her sister's life by initiating the violence that ultimately led to the murder. The victim's sister appealed the case to the higher court, but in all likelihood not much came of it, as is often happened with such cases. Either way, the outcome of such appeals was not reported. Perhaps the most chilling part of the entire ordeal was, on the bridge, on the cold and still dark January morning, when the killer slashed girl's throat and was in the process of pushing her from the bridge. While the girl was still desperately hanging onto the guardrail with her hands, and the killer kicked her one last time before the girl finally fell into the river. "The bitch looked into my eyes before falling down," Volodka muttered during the court proceedings. So yeah, the world can be pretty messed up sometimes and scary. Take care, guys. I hope you liked the video. Please share your opinions in the comments and press the like button, it really helps. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.